Armello may be a video game, but it was clear from the get-go that League of Geeks was looking to sell this game as a traditional board gaming experience, combining gorgeous aesthetics that call to mind stories like Redwall and Game of Thrones, and board gaming mechanics that would be near impossible to replicate in a physical format. Released on Steam exclusively on September 1st, 2015, and while it earned positive rankings on Metacritic, GOG.com, and the like, as well as earning a fair number of accolades in the video gaming awards scene, Armello has a few flaws hidden beneath its beautiful exterior that could lead to this game being all hype and no gameplay. Armello is available through Steam for $20. There are physical copies of the game available for $35, sold through IndieBox, a monthly service that provides a DRM-free physical version of video games as well as assorted merchandise. Armello prides itself on attempting to change the digital board gaming genre, yet relies almost exclusively on tried-and-true board gaming mechanics. Dice-based combat, tile-driven movement, variable player powers, resource management, and the dreaded take-that mechanic all rear their all-too-familiar heads, pointing players in a rather predictable direction. In Armello, 4 players are attempting to steal the crown from the corrupt king through the use of magic, prestige, rot, or raw strength. The first to accomplish this goal wins. Players have 16 turns, 8 day and night cycles in order to reach their chosen victory condition, with their primary tools to do so being their stats. A character's wit value allows them to draw up a certain number of cards at the start of each turn. Players can choose to draw from any 3 of the provided categories of cards, and can draw from each as many times as they choose until they reach their hand limit. Players can draw items to strengthen themselves and their chances at succeeding various actions, although primarily this would be focused on combat. Other items may allow you to temporarily buff your stats, or allow you to heal up a certain number of hit points. Magic cards draw from their spirit stat to tap into wild magic and take a variety of mystic actions. And trickery cards allow you to make pacts with other players against their will, or set traps that players will need to escape by rolling for their wits stat. The spirit stat allots players with a certain amount of wild magic to utilize on their turn, refreshing each night phase, acting as a different form of currency. Body is a player's health, dictating how much punishment they can survive. When dying, a player returns to their clan grounds, one of the 4 corners of the map, and cannot be targeted while there. Lastly, fight dictates how many dice a character has to roll during combat. These dice can be manipulated by burning cards out of your hand, turning dice to a specific face without needing to roll them. Beyond wild magic, there are a few forms of currency that players need to take account of. Money allows you to buy many item cards or pay for certain trickery cards. Money is earned every dawn based on the number of settlements a character controls. Prestige allows a player to become the king's advisor. Each dawn, whoever has the most prestige gets to choose between 2 decrees that may dramatically change the game state by adding traps, summoning more NPCs, or poisoning all players. Prestige is primarily earned through quests and killing other players or Banes, rotten NPCs. Lastly, rot dictates how evil a creature is, preventing them from doing certain actions and making them more combat-focused. Additionally, rotten characters lose 1 health every dawn. On their turn, players are provided with 3 movement and will attempt to move across the board, weaving through various traps and enemies to reach quest locations. Players choose from a list of quests, each based on a specific stat, and will attempt to get a specialty item from that quest via a random chance based on how high the associated stat is. Regardless of whether you get the item or not, players will always receive +1 in one of their stats, as well as 1 prestige. Once completed, a new selection of quests will become available, often forcing you to move to the opposite end of the board, trudging through the various traps and enemies all over again. If you haven't gathered as much by now, Armello is an incredibly luck-heavy game. The cards that you draw, what symbols are associated with those cards, how well you roll dice, whether or not you succeed at quests, the list goes on, and these things are only perpetuated by the other players. Someone might accidentally stumble onto the tile where your quest is located, information only you are privy to generally, meaning you are either forced to fight a potentially powerful enemy, or waste a turn wandering around the outskirts of the tile, biding your time. Not only that, but if you get killed, you'll be sent back to your clan grounds, possibly on the opposite end of the map, making it near impossible to complete that quest in a viable amount of time. And you're stuck with a quest until it's completed, meaning that if you can't seem to reach it, you could be at a serious disadvantage when compared to everyone else, depending on what type of goal you're aiming for. To make matters worse, players are constantly cursing one another with various ailments, laying traps for them to fall into, or instantly killing them with a magic attack that does an obscene amount of damage, slowing the game to a crawl. Despite this, players aren't given much of a chance to have a meaningful impact on the game. Sure, you might be delaying one player from reaching their goal, but you usually aren't progressing if you're doing this, spending various resources to play those cards, resources that might otherwise be used to get to your own goals. And it's clear that some victories are infinitely easier than others, with the combat-based victory being by far the most tedious. Players are tasked with killing the king in combat without being rotten, meaning players have to draw good combat cards and equip them, potentially get the assistance of some followers, make it through enough quests that add to your fight stat to give you a fighting chance, get into the castle grounds by either completing 5 quests and getting a key, or disarming ridiculously difficult traps, and actually kill the king without getting killed yourself. A rot victory, on the other hand, gives you some clear combat advantages. For one, the requirement that you must have more rot than the king means that, when in combat, you will gain an insane amount of dice to roll. This is because if both players have any rot, whoever has the most gets additional dice equal to their rot stat. For another, whereas most cards require you to pay currency, rot cards, when played, force you to gain 1 rot, basically allowing you to spam such cards if you're aiming for that win condition. Yes, you are slightly restricted in what actions you can take, as you can no longer move into stone circle tiles on the board, but the benefits far outweigh the negatives. And yes, there is, a limit to card draw, but many players have determined which deck has the most rot-based cards in it, meaning that if you have a high enough wit stat, you can just draw as many cards out of that deck as you can, play as many of those as you can on your turn, and rinse and repeat until you have a high enough rot stat. The Spirit Stone victory involves no combat, but can feel just as luck-oriented as the combat victory. Players must gather 4 Spirit Stones and bring them to the king, curing him of the rot, but killing him with a burst of wild magic without having to fight at all. Getting those stones, however, can be absurdly tedious. The only way a player can really control getting them is through going on quests, which is never a guaranteed success anyway, sending you on a lengthy journey for potentially little payoff. Players can also move into dungeon tiles, allowing you to get a random currency, item, a spirit stone, or one of the worst and obnoxious cards in the entire game. Getting a good dungeon tile buff can either make or break a player's game in an instant. Lastly, during night phases, Spirit Stones will periodically appear in a random stone circle location, meaning that if you happen to be standing on the right tile, you will automatically get a free Spirit Stone, but could just as easily mean that a King's Guard will get one unwittingly, or a Spirit Stone could sit on a tile for a few turns before someone happens to scoop it up on their adventures. There is one card that allows you to steal another player's Spirit Stone, but it costs 6 coins, an obscene amount of money for one card in this game. So overall, it often feels like you're at the fate of the game to accomplish this goal. Lastly, the Prestige victory is by far the most boring, obnoxious, and the easiest victory to get, playing much like the dreaded Time victory of the Civilization games. If the king dies of natural causes, whoever has the most prestige at the end wins. Basically, this victory encourages players to kill as many of the other players as possible and generally inconvenience them from getting anything done for the 16 turns. And depending on what traps or cards you draw, this victory can be a no-brainer. Even in a game full of computers, you'll find this victory come up, only compounded by the fact that if a player dies when killing the king, then a prestige victory is triggered. This game has some very obvious and apparent, positives about it. The art style in particular really shines the moment you open up the program. And the fact that every card has its own animation, the loving care that goes into each of the character designs, the overall feel of the world can really start to envelop you in the lore that's trying to be created here. And that is definitely something that Armello perpetuates throughout its experience. It's a world that I can definitely see becoming something more if given a bit more lore, a bit more history to it, some more characterization within game. Also, the game can be very convenient to play if you are trying to play it solo. As you play the game more and more, fast forward options will be available, making computer turns zip by very quickly. So that's definitely a plus if you're looking at this from a solo gaming perspective. Unfortunately, that's where my pros for this game ends. Armello is a game that almost exclusively relies on chance. And that's fine. There are a lot of games out there that do that many people enjoy, like Munchkin or Epic Spell Wars. But the issue is that those games focus on a certain level of humor, a certain level of goofiness that I think players can gravitate towards more, and even the most serious gamer can, play one of those games and enjoy it because of the absurdity that's present there. Armello is a game that presents itself as a strategy experience, is very straight-faced about everything it does, and yet almost everything in the game is luck-oriented. And overall, that in and of itself can mar the experience in a huge way. That being said, when you're playing 4-player multiplayer, you can only play that online. For one thing, there's no local co-op or local gameplay at all, which I think is frustrating, especially from a board gaming perspective. But on top of that, the online experience is pretty negative from what I've had. I've been cut out of multiple games about midway through, only to come back in to find out that everyone's left, and I'm playing against, a bunch of computers. And for a board game experience, the fact that you cannot play with the people in the same room as you unless they have another copy and they're linked up online with you is a huge misstep on their part for sure, and it definitely makes the game a lot more difficult to enjoy. And it begs the question of how expensive is this game really? Because if you're looking for a board gaming experience, you buy one copy of the board game and you can play with X number of players. With Armello, if you want to play with your friends, you're going to have to buy potentially 4 copies of this game, making a $20 game into an $80 game. And I don't know that it's worth that much money. So unless you're playing the game solo, I can't really recommend this game. I think that Armello is a game for those individuals who are looking for a convenient, easy to pick up digital game that you can play by yourself. Really, you need to play it by yourself, because otherwise the turns take forever and it's just not an involving game. And the online is okay, but it's not worth fighting with in order to immerse yourself in the experience. And I feel like outside of that, this isn't a board game so much as it is a gaming experience that tries to mimic board gaming. So what do you think? Is Armello all looks and no strategy, or do you find yourself delving into its world again and again? Let me know in the comments, and feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you saw. See y'all next week.